In November 21, a shocking crime occurred in the capital city of Texas. Diane Holick, an IBM executive, was found dead in her bedroom. The cause of death was strangulation, but there were no obvious signs of physical harm. Investigators were perplexed by the lack of evidence at the crime scene. As the investigation progressed, neighbors came forward with information about a man who pretended to be interested in buying their homes.
10 out of the 15 witnesses identified Tony Russo as the man who came to their homes.
Repeat the following phrase. You have a beautiful house. You have a beautiful house.
This revelation led the authorities to identify the perpetrator as Patrick Russo, a church minister. He was arrested, convicted of capital murder, and sentenced to life in prison for his heinous act.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Patrick Anthony Russo, guilty of the offense of capital murder.
I got locked up at 26 years old, and I'm 60 years old now. It would actually be about 34 years of my life. My mother and father got a divorce, and my father felt like I was his only son, his only child out of 3 children at the time. And my mother was trying to get back at my father. So in the process of getting back at him, she would put me in foster homes. And in California, in order to get custody of your child, you got to file paperwork in the county that the child's in. So she kept moving me around from county to county, from foster home to foster home. She'd bring me home for a week or 2 or a month and then put me in another foster home to basically get back at my father, because I didn't understand what it was about them that she liked or loved, and what it was about me that she either hated or didn't like. And it was confusing to me, because I didn't, I just had no understanding of what was going on. And because of that, I grew more angry, more hurt, more resentful. I had a lot of anger towards my mother, because even when I was on on home visits from foster homes, my stepfather would beat me. I remember one time getting punched in the face and just getting knocked out. I might have been 9 years old. There were a couple of foster homes that I just got beat so bad sometimes just because I didn't do a chore right. Because I didn't feed the dog one time. I got literally beat with a hanger till I passed out. I had so many different house parents and counselors telling me how life is supposed to be, and some of them were pretty dysfunctional and distorted, and others were, kind, but still confusing. What started the whole foster home thing in the first place was my mother had abandoned us in this slums. When she left my father, she went to some slums, and we were hungry, and we hadn't eaten in 3 days. And so we went to the neighbor's house, and the neighbors called the police, and that's when they took us in custody. And eventually she got custody of my siblings about a year later, but she didn't want me back at the house. She wanted me to stay away so my father couldn't get custody of me. I had such anger and hate built up through those years that by the time I was an adult, I was just angry at the world. I was hurt. I didn't trust anybody. I believed that nobody had my best interest at heart, and I just became a violent person. I had a lot of anger outbursts some of them were pretty violent, and I dropped out at 17 years old when they emancipated me as an adult and basically put me on the streets. Then I ended up joining a street gang because I needed some kind of comfort to feel like I belonged, and they were like a family. And so I started getting involved in the street gang life, and drove me into doing drugs. I became a hardcore drug addict. I was doing everything: cocaine, pot, magic mushrooms, pain pills, drinking, anything you can think of just about except shooting up because I didn't like needles. Other than that, I probably would have been shooting up too. And I stayed high all the time. I couldn't find drugs or I didn't have the amount of money I needed for drugs. I'd go to the store and buy NyQuil, just drink down a bottle of NyQuil just so I wouldn't have to deal with the hurt and the pain. That turning point was when the realization that my boys could very well end up like I ended up, with a lot of hurt and anger, not just towards their mother, but maybe towards me. And that was all the family I really had. And I just felt like I needed something different in my life. I needed some peace in my life. I needed the hurt and the anger to be gone. And the only way that was going to leave was going to be a miracle from God, because it was so deeply seated in me that no amount of teaching, no amount of preaching, no programs could have ever removed that. Only God could have reached down deep inside of me and removed that from me. And he did. And he removed the drug addiction overnight. I never had any euphoric recalls. I never had any cravings for any of the drugs. And that was probably the two things that changed in me the quickest. And that my temper dramatically changed from being angry and just blowing up at people for the littlest things, thinking they should understand who I am and what I'm about, and what I want, and what I need. Now it was more compassion and understanding and kindness towards others. Just seeing how God's worked in my life when I've studied His Word and I've put into practice what I've been reading and learning. What God says He's going to do, He does. And I haven't not had that happen. And when He says, don't do this, and otherwise this is what's going to happen, then if I do that and I see this as the consequence of that action, I see how true His Word is on both sides of that fence, on what He'll do for you and what He'll allow as consequences in your life if you don't do what He says. And I like it better on the side that receives the blessings over the curses. So what I like about UBB is, one, they truly have a heart for us. The love for the inmates is amazing. Their commitment, their faithfulness is beyond anything I've seen in any ministry. In all the years I've been down, I've never seen a ministry that is so committed to making a difference in our lives for Christ. Not just making a difference, but a difference for Christ. I can learn life skills anywhere. I can learn how to deal with anger management. I can learn how to practice patience. There's some things you can learn how to do, but you can't have a relationship with God unless you learn how the Holy Spirit can move in your life. And that's where the difference is.
Now, you're here for life.
Yes.
Why even bother with UBB?
Yeah, you know
what I mean?
I've had people...
With respect, I ask that.
Sure, I've had people ask me that. And I can say that if I can make the difference in one person's life so they don't end up like me, I can't do that on my own. I need help with that. And I need help from learning from others, and I need help from the Holy Spirit. And because of that, then it's enabled me to have the tools to be able to try to make a difference, especially in the younger guys' lives that I run into. I've tried to make a difference in as many guys, youngsters' lives as I can that God leads me to. And I just couldn't do that without that help. My favorite lesson would probably be how the Holy Spirit works in our life. how sometimes when we may not feel the Holy Spirit present doesn't mean that he's not present. Definitely not going by my feelings. My feelings change from hour to hour, but God doesn't change from hour to hour, and his Holy Spirit doesn't stop working hour from hour and then start working again. He's constantly working in our lives. I mean, I've done a lot of things. I've been through Bible college. I've done a lot of different things, but they don't teach you about the Holy Spirit working. They teach you all the legalistic things, but they don't teach you about the spiritual things, not in depth like UBB has done. God is working through UBB. He is definitely, they got such incredibly spirit-filled ministers that come in and pastors, and that's been an influence in my life. And I would hope that anybody listening would give them a chance to just listen to them, listen to what they have to say, because you know it's truth. You just know it's truth.